fear wasn't the enemy, but a misunderstood invitation. I'm your host, Shreya. Today, we are diving into a mind expanding journey with Duff McDuffie, hypnotist, coach, and advocate for neurodivergent brilliance. He's here to talk about shifting out of fear driven patterns and into the expansive creative flow of love. If you are ever felt stuck in overwhelm, this conversation might just rewire more than you thinking. It could shift your paradigm. Welcome, Duff. I'm honored to have you on my show.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Okay, so Duff, you say you are wired for fear but designed for love. What's the first sign someone is operating from fear without even realizing it?
Great question. So, a lot of the times we are operating from fear whenever we're feeling stressed about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And whenever we feel like we need to force ourselves to do something, for instance, if we're like, I have to get this done by the end of the day, right? Obviously, we're
Yeah,
very
yeah, yeah.
stressed, right? And those words like have to, must, should, I have to get this done. I must do this. I should do it, or I have to do it in this particular way. These are good indications that we're already operating from a fear-based paradigm, what I call the punishment paradigm. The punishment paradigm says the best or only way to get ourselves to do things is with fear and pain, right? That's motivating. And that can be motivating. I'm not saying you can't do it that way. Sometimes I do things that way, of course, too. We all do things that way sometimes.
Yes.
Perfectly normal, perfectly human. It's just that it has some consequences, some
Yeah.
negative side effects. And stress is one of those things, right? It's not doing things from inner peace, as your show's all about. It's doing
Yes.
things out of obligation or stress or forcing or have to. So we can do things that way, but there's also another way. We can shift paradigms into a totally different way of doing things, what I call
Yes.
the progress paradigm, which is motivation from joy and love. Motivation from joy and love. If you love to do something, if you're just like, oh, I love, you know, going outside and looking at the birds, whatever it is, I love reading novels, I love, dancing.
Mm.
And you don't have to force yourself necessarily to do those things, right?
Yes.
You don't have to, you don't have to push yourself. You just enjoy it. And you do it out of love, you do it out of joy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that feels totally different.
Yes. Yes. I totally agree with you. And that's such a powerful distinction that stress can be so sneaky. And what helps begin the shift into love, especially when fears feel familiar or it feels safe?
Yes, right. It does feel familiar. That's exactly right. Many of us feel like we have to do what we have to do, right? What are you talking about, Duff? Like, I just have to do this thing. I just have to get it done.
Mm.
So, how can we start to shift? Well, the first thing we can really start to focus on is, do we actually have to? Do
Yes.
we have to? Is that the only way to go about doing something? Now, it might feel like that at first. It might feel like, yes, that's the only way. But start to look for the other things in your life, right? The things that you just enjoy, the things that light you up from the inside out. You don't have to force a feeling, but it just moves you in some way.
Yes.
And to start going beyond what you think is the normal way of doing something,
Yes.
like there's this normal way. Everyone does it this way, so we have to do it that way. Well,
Mm.
what if there was another possibility? You're starting to wonder about other options.
Yes, 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 yes. That's wonderful. And you work with neurodivergent entrepreneurs.
Yes.
What's unique about their relationship with fear, stress, or maybe productivity?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, neurodivergent folks in general, what does that mean? It just means, neuro, as in the brain.
Okay.
We have many different kinds of brains in the world.
Hmm.
And some people have a very different kind of brain, right? Might have gotten diagnosed with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or autism spectrum disorder, or maybe you're not diagnosed, but you've just always thought, I think very differently than other people, or I
Mhm.
process very differently than other people.
Mhm.
And probably you've also thought there must be something wrong with me because I think differently than other people, or I process differently than other people. But that's not necessarily the case. In fact, you can look at it as I have some gift. I have some different perspective to offer. And so many neurodivergent people end up starting their own businesses. They start a
Mhm.
podcast. They start they become a coach. They open up a retail shop. They do something because they see different opportunities. They see things that other people aren't seeing, which can be actually an amazing opportunity, and sometimes also a challenge in getting things done because maybe your brain doesn't focus in the way that other people's brain just naturally focuses, right?
Yes.
Because you have a more creative brain, you're more open to other possibilities and options, and so you start focusing on one thing and it jumps over here, and you start focusing on that and it jumps over here. And so just being able to focus on one thing until you complete it can be a challenge. Or sometimes what comes up is something like imposter syndrome. Who am I to start a business? I've never started a business before. I don't know what I'm doing. Who am I to do this? Right. And so we have this like self-doubt that can creep in. But that's more of this punishment paradigm. It's this idea that we need to motivate ourselves and others with fear and pain. So it's actually like part of you trying to motivate yourself to actually do the thing, but from a place of pain, which actually isn't that motivating sometimes, right? It's not really how we could live from a place of joy in our business and being focused on what do I love about my business? What do I love about this thing that I want to create? And when we focus on that, we feel motivated too. We feel
Yes.
energy in our bodies and we want to go do the thing. And that can really help to get started if you're dealing with procrastination, which is a major issue a lot of neurodivergent entrepreneurs are struggling with. Oh,
Yes.
I got all these things I want to create, but I'm not doing them. How do I get myself to do it? Or focus. How do we stay on task? Well, we can start to really get devoted to the task. So instead of discipline, we can do things from discipline. I'm not very good at doing things from discipline. I'll just be honest, right? I'm
Mhm.
not very disciplined because discipline's about forcing yourself to do the thing you hate, forcing yourself to do the thing you hate. Sometimes I can get myself to do that, but afterwards I need a nap, right? I'm drained, I'm tired. But if you're not
Yes.
forcing yourself to do the thing you hate, if you're devoted to it out of love, then it's more about becoming absorbed in the task in like a flow state. And actually, a lot of neurodivergent entrepreneurs get into flow states, but sometimes the flow state goes in the wrong direction. It goes into playing a video game or scrolling Instagram or watching Netflix and just one more, right? And that's kind of a flow state too. But we can start to direct these flow states towards the tasks we actually want to complete. Then we have this incredible alignment where we're actually achieving the things we want to achieve in life and just having an amazing time doing it.
Yes, yes, yes. That's so insightful. And neurodivergent experiences shift the whole narrative. And sometimes we also feel that we cannot focus on something, or maybe we're not feeling well or not that attentive. But your insights are so much helpful for this. Uh, with that, one question comes to my mind, that what is one mindset that shift that unlocks more joy and flow for them?
Yes. So to switch into more joy, one thing we can do is to focus on the why. Why are you even doing this thing? Right? Why are you doing your business or why are you doing this specific task? So this can be especially helpful if you have some resistance to doing something, right? If you're procrastinating or you're putting it off, you're struggling to get it done, you're probably trying to force your way through a feeling of resistance. So instead of doing that, which you can do, you can try to be disciplined. That's the punishment paradigm. Lots of advice on that all over, right? Just do it. Okay, well, what if that's not working? Then you can try this other thing, which is to ask yourself, well, why? Why do I want to get this done? Right? So let's say you're producing a podcast and you have an episode to edit and put out there into the world and you're not doing it. Well, why do I want to get this done? because someone's going to listen to this and get inspired by this. And then maybe you can picture that person in your mind. You're making it up, but you can picture that person, and they're listening in their car, or they're walking around, they're cleaning their house, and they're listening to this podcast, and they're getting inspired, right? And that starts to inspire you. And so you start to feel joy and love and inspiration coming from inside out, and then go do the thing while you're feeling that way. So then you're doing it out of love, you're doing it out of joy. And that can change everything. It seems so simple. It seems so simple, but it can start to change everything. And if the first answer you get is like, well, why? I just want to get it done. Okay, you're not inspired yet. So why do I want to get it done? You go deeper. I want to get it done so that, I'll have another episode in the can. Okay, why do you want another episode in the can? Then you get to the inspiration. So sometimes you have to go 2 or 3 levels deep, but such a simple way to do things. And there's lots of different ways to do this, but it's a paradigm shift from forcing to flowing, from fear to love. And it can be so fast, though. It doesn't have to take forever. Now, we can also grow in this over time. It's okay if you're not there now. It's okay if you're burned out. If you're listening to this thing like, okay, it's all a great idea, but I'm really tired. I'm really burned out. I've got a lot of things on my plate to do. This isn't helping me, right? It's just about taking these small steps, though, just a little bit closer to feeling inspired and feeling full of joy.
Yes.
Right. And sometimes that means going and meditating first, right? Or doing some breath work or some prayer or some mantra or whatever, because all that can also reconnect us with that inner joy, that inner aliveness.
Yes, that's so true. And especially in today's world when people are so much in work pressure and they are running for their work, I think more of them are doing the job because of fear and not for love. But I think this podcast can help them to rewrite it, especially. And as a hypnotist and NLP trainer, how do you use language to reframe someone's internal story from fear-based to love-based?
Great question. So a lot of what we do in neurolinguistic programming in particular is use language. So that's the linguistic and neurolinguistic programming. So the neuro refers to, we all have brains, we all have nervous systems. Language, the linguistics, we can change our brains just by how we are talking to ourselves, how we are thinking about it, both in language and in terms of pictures, inner experience. So one of the ways I often utilize this is just to ask some really basic, gentle questions, right? So we're not trying to force someone to switch paradigms into love. That would be more forcing. We want to be really gentle, really kind, right? So when someone comes to me as a client and they're in this sort of have to mode, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to get all this stuff done, right? I might ask them some questions like, okay, you're thinking of it in terms of you have to do this, you have to do that. Is that the only way that you can think about this, right? Do you have to use the word have to, right? Can you not do it in a different way? And these are really gentle questions. I'm not saying you can't do it that way. I'm just saying, what if there was a better way to do it? So just starting to ask some really gentle questions. Or you might start asking about, if you were going to give advice to another person, right? Is this the advice you would do? Is this the advice you would give? You have to get things done. You have to be stressed all the time. You have to, right? Someone you love. That's the advice you would give. Like, of course not, right?
Yeah.
You would be like, no, take your time. Like, really, do it in a good way. It's important that you not get too stressed about this, right? So why aren't we treating ourselves with that much love and kindness? What if you did, as an experiment, gave yourself that kindness, that presence, that patience and gentleness? It could transform things in beautiful ways. So yes, just asking these little gentle questions that start to open up new possibilities, especially when we're stuck. When we're really stuck, we're often stuck in both have to and can't. Right? I have to get this done and I can't. It's impossible, right? I have to do it in this way, but I don't have the ability, right? And we're really, really stuck when we have a have to and a can't together. But that's luckily, that's just the way we're thinking about it. You know, we're believing that that's the only possibility, when actually there's infinite possibilities for how we can look at something or talk about it or what language we can use. And when we start to gently question these things, it's like we've been living in a castle, right? And it's an amazing castle and it's well fortified and well defended. And anyone who comes up to that castle and questions it, and it's like, hey, do you want to leave the castle? There's all these amazing things outside the castle. We're like, no, get away. And we're firing arrows at them, right? And we're defending our castle. We're defending these belief systems that have kept us safe for so many years. And so the first thing to do is really honor that belief system. It's like, this has kept you safe. How wonderful. Thank you so much. And what if we start to explore a little outside the castle too? Because maybe it's safe out there now. The war's over. We
Yes.
can go outside the castle and start to explore. And oh, there's this beautiful forest. Wow, there's this amazing stuff out here. There's other people. There's other possibilities. So that's what I really think of as like a paradigm. We get stuck inside this paradigm, this castle where it's well defended. Anybody gives us evidence to the contrary, we say, no, that's not true. Right. And so to start to, we don't necessarily have to take down the walls, but we can start to explore outside of them just a little bit and just see if there's any other possibilities that are even greater.
Yes, yes, yes. That's amazing. And especially, I think majority of our listeners, maybe they sometimes forget that here is a me behind the work. We put the work first and then ourselves. But this time we need to really stop and ask ourselves that is the work is the first priority or me? I need to just stop and focus on myself something and I just look the world in a better way. Maybe it would change our perspective too. And that's amazing. So let's talk about the resistance. When someone knows they want to choose love, but still sabotages or freezes, what's happening there?
Great question. Happens to me. It happens to all of us, right?
Yeah.
I know I want to choose love. I'm writing a book on it. And yet I still sometimes freeze and I get into resistance. So what's happening there? We can explain it a lot of different ways. But the freeze response is a safety mechanism in the body, right? Like the stress response, we initially sort of called it the fight or flight response, in that animals, when they're stressed, they can fight or they can run away. From what? From some other animal that's maybe attacking them, right? A predator. And we have the same thing. We're humans, but we're also animals. We evolved from animals. And so when we have any sort of stress come in, we could fight it. We could try to, argue. We could run away and feel anxiety, or we could also freeze and play dead. And that's what it feels like. Our energy shuts down, right? We feel kind of dead inside. We feel demotivated. But interestingly, in nature, we've observed animals that have played dead. And once they get up and they kind of shake. They kind of tremble a little bit. They kind of spasm almost in their muscles for a little while. And it makes them come back alive, and then they run off. And so we can actually do something like that. Now, that could be putting on some music that you like and just dancing to some music, right? When you feel really stuck, when you feel really shut down, when you feel in the freeze response, maybe a little depressed, maybe put on some upbeat music, dance around for 5 minutes, and just see how that starts to change your state. Or I do something I call bounce, shake, flow. So it's just like it sounds. So you just kind of bounce up and down a little bit. And even as you're listening to this podcast, you can do this. You can just kind of bounce gently up and down. If you're sitting, you're standing. And then you can kind of shake yourself out, shake your arms, shake your legs, shake your whole body. And then you kind of flow. You can move in a fluid kind of way, like a dancer flowing to soft music, maybe a minute each. And then just feel your body, and you're going to feel different. You're going to feel energy in your body. In meditation, we sometimes call that, subtle energy, prana, chi. But you just start to feel some like buzzy, tingling, blissful feelings in your body. Feel pretty good. And maybe do several rounds of that, right? So you can go back and forth between thinking about something that freezes you, that stops you. Maybe it's a task that you're putting off and it feels bad. You're like, ugh, I feel bad when I think about it. And then you move your body in this way that feels good for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. You think about the task. Move your body. Think about the task. Move your body as many times as you need, really, because you're going to procrastinate anyway. Let's be honest. Either you go on Instagram or you move your body and you feel better. But when we practice this alternating, or what I call pattern interrupt, right? We're paradigm shifting back and forth between stuck and in the flow, stuck and in the flow, stuck and in the flow. And we start to get this sense of choice. So when we feel stuck, we're like, oh, I know how to get out of this. I know how to get out of this. I can move my body. I can breathe. I can do something that changes my physiology. It changes my brain, really. I can tap on my body. There's all these tapping methods now, EFT and so on, where it wakes up your body, wakes up the sensation, it wakes up the energy of your body. And you start to feel better. And you feel in your body, and you're like, oh, I feel positive, blissful kind of sensations. And that's already moving something inside. So we're no longer frozen. We're no longer stuck. We can start to take action with that energy in the flow. And so it's not forcing. We don't have to force ourselves. We can get back in the flow of things. And it's beautiful.
Yes, yes. And it's more beautiful to see that there are very simple and small things that we can do to overcome our problems. Like sometimes think that, okay, it's just done. I'm done. I'm paused. I'm freezed. But there are very simple things that we can do to rewrite our life maybe. And I think our listeners got that very nice insight and very beautiful information that they can do whenever they're thinking that they froze or that resistance comes. And with that, I have another question, that how can they work with that resistance instead of against it?
Yes. Yes. Working with the resistance is exactly right. So there's a hypnotist named Stephen Gilligan who studied with the great Milton Erickson. And Stephen Gilligan had a saying about resistance. He said, resistance is just a sign of insufficient rapport. Resistance is a sign of insufficient rapport. So a lot of hypnotists, a lot of therapists, even a lot of coaches are like, oh, my client is resistant. They're not, I told them what to do and they're not doing it. Right? Yeah. I said, just, or, I suggested doing this thing and they're not following. But Stephen Gilligan was like, no, that's not how we work with resistance. That's like trying to swim upstream or paddle a boat upstream. But you go with the flow, you go with the resistance at first. So if some part of you is like, I don't want to do this thing, first thing to say is yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. And you don't have to. And I tell my clients this, and they're like, what are you talking about? No, Duff, I have to do this thing. Or someone will even come to me and they want to change a behavior, right? Like maybe they want to quit smoking. They've heard hypnosis can help with that. And the first thing I'll tell them is, you can keep smoking as long as you want. Do you want to keep smoking for the rest of your life? Do you want to be on your deathbed saying, could you light this cigarette? I can't hold it anymore. Is that what you want? You can do that if you want. And they say, no, of course not. That's not what I want. I'm like, oh, okay, well then we can work towards quitting smoking then. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Now, it may feel like you have to, because I have to keep my job. And if I lose my job, I won't have food. And if I don't have food, I'll die. Well, who said you had to live? You're choosing. At some level, you want to live, which means you want to make money, which means you want to eat, which means, and if you can actually connect with the want, that starts to move you in a better direction. That may seem subtle. It may seem like a subtle distinction, but it's an important one because it gets you back in your power and your sense of choice. Whereas resistance is like, this task has power over me, right? It's like, I am the slave to the master of this task. Mm-hmm. Right? Controls me at some level. But when we get back into our sense of power, it's like, no, that's just one way of thinking about it. This task is not a person. Even a person doesn't really control me because I have choice. I have choice. I can quit this job. I can tell them, no, I'm not doing that. Or I can say, I'm doing it tomorrow. Or, we still do have choice, even given the limits of our lives and circumstances. But when we feel that choice, we feel empowered. And we're no longer a victim to the thing that's coming in. And then we can start to connect with the why again, why we want to do what we're doing and get inspired. Especially if you have your own business. You chose to go in business for yourself. Right? No one's forcing you. You're maybe the boss. Right? And this happens, though, with my entrepreneurial clients. They're like, yeah, I'm the boss. I'm the worst boss I've ever had. I force myself to do things all the time.
Yes.
And so a lot of this is coming back into sort of self-compassion, but also a kind of new leadership. So there's a kind of leadership that's like a dictator, that's like, my way or the highway, you're going to do what I say, right? And we often have that inside ourselves, right? I'm going to do what I told myself to do, or else I'm going to punish myself with, mean words or shame, anger. But there's a totally different way of leadership, both external and inside of ourselves, which is what I call loving leadership. And loving leadership is like the best parent you can imagine, or the best leader you can imagine, who really deeply cares and is like, yes, and we have a mission here. We're doing some stuff. We're, but inspire the people who we're doing this with, rather than forcing them. How can I inspire? How can I create, something that is really going to light everybody up, or within yourself? How can I phrase this to myself in a way that's going to light me up, so that I do this out of love instead of forcing?
Yes, that's so beautiful. And you said a line that really clicked me, that we feel the choice and then we feel empowered. So I think that's a very good line for our listeners also, that we have to feel the choice and then we can feel empowered. And in your experience, what happens when someone fully steps into love, not just intellectually, but somatically and emotionally?
Yes, great question. It changes everything. It's so subtle in a way. It's like, oh, well, who cares? Stuff like, why does this even matter? It changes everything. So when we're in the punishment paradigm, over time, our energy is actually getting drained. We're going down closer and closer to burnout. But when we are doing things from the progress paradigm, from love and joy, we're increasing our energy more and more and more. And so life just becomes more amazing.
Yes.
Colors become more vivid. Our body feels better. Our emotions are turning towards love and joy and peace more and more. Our relationships are getting better. It just lights everything up. And even going for our goals, like in business, if you're an entrepreneur, you start to get so inspired, it's infectious, and it brings people in, and it's naturally persuasive. You don't have to try to persuade anybody to join your cause or buy from you or anything. You don't have to sell them with, manipulative tactics and so on. You can just talk excitedly, naturally, about what you love, and it brings people on board, and they just want to be involved because it lights something up in them too.
Yes.
And so the more we're living from that love, the more we're really creating a better world too, because it starts to ripple out. And it ripples out, and someone has an encounter with you because you're just radiating, and then they feel good, and then they go have an encounter with somebody else, and then they feel good, and it kind of just ripples out more and more. And I think that's true of all spiritual practice, and this really fits into that. So it becomes a spiritual experience of our oneness and our wholeness, and we're all already connected in that way. But then we're starting to really feel it.
Yes. That's so profound shift. Embodying love on every level is like life changing. So if my listeners want to connect with you, then what's the best way?
Go over to boulderhypnosisworks.com. That's BOULDER, as in Boulder, Colorado, boulderhypnosisworks.com, and check it out. I've got an inspiring weekly email. I'm actually going to create a podcast of my own called The Neurodivergent Entrepreneur. And be great to work with some of you if you want to work together.
Yes, that's wonderful. And I'll make sure to attach all the links and details below so our listeners can find them easily. And Duff McDuffie reminds us that fear doesn't need to be fought. It needs to be transformed. Love isn't a soft deal. It's a radical paradigm shift. So if you are tired of pushing through stress and ready to lead with heart, this is your sign. Step in, let love lead. The shift starts now. And listen to Inner Peace Better Health podcast.